Hello and welcome to The Insider. I'm Caroline Hill, Editor-in-Chief of Legal IT Insider. I'm here on Litera TV to talk with Keith Lipman, who I'm hoping will appear any minute now. Keith.
I'm here.
Hi, Keith. Hi, Keith, the CEO and co-founder of Prosperoware. I was about to introduce you in your absence. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I will introduce Prosperoware for anybody who doesn't know it, although I'm sure most of you do. So Prosperoware develops software for privacy, cybersecurity, compliance for content systems and financial management as well. Financial matter management. And today we're here to talk about, we've got a busy half an hour. So we've decided ambitiously that we are going to talk a little bit about obviously working from home has been a topic of conversation for a long time, but we're kind of almost entering working from home Mark 2. So I'm going to talk to Keith, talk to you about what you're hearing about the challenges that people are facing and what their sort of some of their objectives are. We're going to do like a mini Teams briefing, sharing some of your knowledge and the conversations you're having, as well as inevitably, because your solution CAM for Teams is solving some of the provisioning problems that people are having. So I'm sure people will be really interested to hear about that. And then at the end, we've got a challenge in terms of some work that we're going to be doing together to help people perhaps with some of the problems that we're going to be talking about. So we've got a busy half an hour. What conversations in your conversations with people at the moment around working from home, are the conversations, have they changed? Obviously we've been talking about working from home for quite a while now, but this is effectively entering a new phase. What are people sharing in terms of their challenges of working from home at the moment?
I think it's the realization that I think everybody, started to feel like work from home was going, we were getting to the end. And as we start, and getting to the end, it was okay, but now we're not, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's clear for many people that we are not going to be everybody back to the office for a very long time. It means that, and I think it means really not, it's not the challenges, not challenges, but I think we've now got, the Bunsen burner on and the crucible in, and we're all, the people in the Bunsen burner about to be gelled into a different business process, because that's, it's, this, and we've heard it from, well, people are starting to look at it strategically. You haven't for the last 6 months had a secretary or a PA outside of your office. So you can't tell me anymore you need one, right? Can you tell, it's starting to rethink what, if it was one thing to say it was 6 months, it's another thing to say it's 18 months.
Yeah.
So I think from an industry perspective, people are going, it's going to be different. I mean, I'll tell you, I personally had this like stark, thing. We actually had a moment where we had enough of our sales team and a couple of the services people in the office at once, appropriately social distanced.
Yeah, of course.
And what's fascinating was it's very different, right? You forget that, the fact that somebody can ask you 3 seconds questions versus they can, versus they call you. So you permanently are going to have to create a substitute for that, which is where it gets us to why Teams is the hot topic because of chatting.
Yeah. And workflow. I mean, the secretarial bit is fascinating, isn't it? Because so it's, I guess it's a case of what does the workflow look like? How do you manage if they're? I think you've said yourself before. What does it look like if they're in pools, or how do you manage that? What was sort of the workflow behind the scenes, and I guess there's so many different questions at the moment that people are having to ask themselves about how they work, right?
Yeah, I mean, because it's very different. I mean, so I described it, I think, as somebody who left actually practicing law 2 decades ago, but it was still the same issue, which is, I remember when it was the tape.
Yeah.
The paper, you put the paper in the tape and you leave it, and you would go to you would basically hand it to like the secretarial administrator, who would then find somebody who was available to go type it because you were a baby associate.
I did that too.
But you have to reproduce that, and you have to leave a note in there to describe what you wanted them to actually do, beside, either on the tape or outside of the tape. And so that says, okay, we need to reproduce that. And now let's add this idea that we've got whether you call it pessimistic security, need to know security, or something else, as data is more and more secure, how are you going to systemically give that person access from a technology perspective?
Yeah, and presumably, and you, I mean, obviously, so there's very much a difference between the back office support and then the fee earners. But I guess now, and I guess now firms are really having to wrestle, as you said, it's not a temporary thing. They're having to look at productivity. So they've achieved that Mark II. Everyone got to work from home. You had the arrangements in place, but that was kind of like but now it's like, what next, right? How do we achieve higher level productivity? How do we, and I suppose that does then come onto the teams question, right? Like, I guess before we start talking about teams specifically.
No. Yeah, I was going to say, no, but think of it this way. And this is the thing to think about, right? Let's say I've got my DMS and so now I no longer have an assigned assistant, right? Let's talk about the issues. I don't have an assigned assistant and we're working on a matter and there's no secretary who has access to this data.
Yeah.
Right. So the question will be, and then there's a pool of people sitting there somewhere across the globe, because it doesn't really matter. They're all working from home. So how do I do the virtual, hand this document, give them the note, put in essence the virtual tape or whatever that is, or what do I want them to do? Mm-hmm. How do I hand it to somebody who's going to then give it out as a project to that pool of people? Or is it first in, first out? Is it some queue? But all of those things are either, are solved manually through email, or solved with technology along the way. I mean, there's just all sorts of big, hairy issues that the industry is going to, it's actually a big project to really say what's going to go on.
And I think, so didn't you also say that that with the financial crisis of 2008, that everyone thought that if this was going to be like the time when that everything was going to change in terms of the way that people interact with technology, and actually that didn't happen. But do you think that this actually is in practice that's happening now, in a way that it hasn't before?
I think it is the no choice situation. Right? It's the no, it's not like you're sitting from home and you were a technophobe and you don't know how to use this technology. So you called your paralegal, your assistant, your first year in, who goes, oh, I'm good at this. I'll solve this for you. No, you're sitting from home.
Yeah.
You're on your own. I mean, but it's no longer emergency mode. It's going to become permanent mode. So in some ways, we're mapping towards what I would call the new world. I mean, we're really mapping not to just the new normal for legal, but the moment where there's a term that the Gartners and the Forresters and other people, which is digital transformation. Right? Yeah. What digital transformation says is not, oh, I get better at Word. It says, how do I use technology best to automate my processes, to reduce cost, to deliver it in a smooth, faster, better, cheaper. Yeah. That's what technology does. It either makes you faster or it makes it cheaper. Yeah. In other words, less humans.
And we'll come on to this is perhaps where the collaboration bit comes on at the end, but actually one of the issues is that firms don't still completely understand how they operate. So in order to automate that, so they don't yet still understand their processes. So in order to automate that and then use technology, it's still a challenge.
I mean, so one of the other projects I've worked on was, is around the Sally Standard project of matter typing, right? So if you look at that project, one of the things that firms struggle with is even just knowing what is the service delivery. And, and then we've got the fact that, I've been in many a meeting where the firm will say, well, partner A does it this way and partner B does it the same process. Partner A does it this way, partner B does it this way, and partner C does it that way. Well, I think that made sense when you could go and sit with partner A and learn his process, and then go to partner B and learn his process. So the question is does this force meeting, the one thing we can answer, we don't know of an answer, will this force them to actually unify working practice?
Yeah. But at the same time, you've got this data sprawl, right, in terms of the number of systems. So in terms of like the number of systems, and that's actually increasing because obviously we're working remotely, and so we're using more channels than we've ever used before.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, that's what I think that's the biggest thing we've seen since, if you look pre the last, before the financial crisis, it was email, DMS, and this extranet thing that we put up that no one really used. With every firm, I mean, yeah, there's always some examples of people really using it, but it wasn't that much. And I think today you've got, e-discovery is, e-disclosure or e-discovery is not going away. You've got Latera's got both, transaction I'll give them the plug since it's their TV. They've got transaction management, litigation management. You've got extranet platforms and other things that people are putting data everywhere. I mean, there's companies who are just do bundling, and so the data keeps sprawling. And then there's also a set of users who don't like the document management system.
Yeah.
Because the firms might have didn't really adjust it very much. So when it didn't fit their process, and when I mean process and document management, it usually is the folder structure didn't work the way I wanted it to work, and the firm has not given me a choice to create it in the way I want to work.
Yeah.
So what that means is if I had the ability, I went to my file share, right? And I did all that in the file share, and then the firm lost governance of that data.
Yeah, which is surprisingly common, isn't it? I mean, I think people, yeah. I think perhaps more common than perhaps sometimes we sort of give acknowledgement to, or I give acknowledgement to, or anybody gives acknowledgement to.
I think it's more common. I mean, I get many stories of what I call, even on email management, where people dump their email.
Yeah.
So in other words, there's a mailbox limit. I've reached the mailbox limit. I don't do a good job of foldering my email in the first place. I just grab all of it and just dump it into my personal filing location in the document management system. Okay, so we really haven't changed anything, right? We just moved the problem from your email system to your document management system, but there is no categorization along the way.
Yeah.
If the client asks for the file, we're going to have a set of people go through your inbox in essence, which is just moved to move data.
Yeah, that does sounds quite familiar, I have to say. You can tell I used to be a lawyer. Obviously, I've got the same trait. So, okay. So we'll come on to the date back. We're going to come back to the data sprawl and what we can do about that a little bit more when we talk about helping us to collaborate. But so then looking at so one of the things that you've been really, I know, talking to the industry about, including through a webinar that we've done together, is teams. Okay, so, and I think that so for my own conversations, there's been a huge uptick in the number of firms that are looking either, I guess they're on different stages of the path, right? So tell me, what stages are you seeing firms at? Presumably some are at the very beginning, but some are quite far along in terms of adopting teams.
I think some firms are, so I think there's two flavors. There's those who kind of just went, we're just going to start using it. We'll figure it out later. We've got ones where basically the risk management folks have gone, wait. Let's remind you, and the stronger the risk management background or the security team who go, we have ethical wall. We need to figure out how to get the data back. We need to figure out how to put client matter around it. We need to figure out all of the things so that we can check the box when the large banks and others who are very concerned about that stuff come in and go, we need to, we're going to get audited. How are we going to transfer the data? Because again, one of the lovely parts of legal is the law firm actually doesn't own most of their data. It's actually owned by the client. Yeah. So those type of issues are driving change. And then it's also the desire, and then the lawyers are pushing it because they want chat.
Yes.
Right? They want the ability to chat. And I can tell you as a personal Teams user, one of the things that we did at PressBioWare is we mostly have eliminated internal email.
Okay.
And if you think about it, kind of back to our original dumping statement, if we can eliminate a lot of the personal, the email, that's at least internal, then maybe people can do a better job of actually dealing with the client email.
It makes so much sense, right? Like, and I remember when I first started writing for Legal IT Insider in 2014, I remember speaking to Daniel Pollock at DLA, and they'd launched this product called Grapevine, where he was going, if I can try and find a way to eliminate, I mean, bearing in mind, this is so 6 years ago, but eliminate email, eliminate into chat, email, because it's just so impossible to stay on top of, and we use Teams, as you know, and so it makes a lot of sense. But in terms of and there's a lot of pressure from clients, isn't there? So I think that I've heard you described on our webinar as Teams as the project that no one was thinking about, and then now it's the project that everybody's thinking about. Did I murder that? How would
No,
you
you did.
describe it?
I think that's absolutely true. I mean, we went, what was most important? We began the year with Teams is a nice to have. I'll get there eventually. To a month, basically 3 weeks into the original lockdowns, and everybody's like, clearly we're going to need to start figuring out how to solve this.
Yeah.
And the reality is, I think you can say for most large firms, they're really starting to grapple with it.
Yeah.
It's taken 6 months. It's still taking, it didn't go, it's still gone very slowly. What people have focused on, and there's a confusion, right? When I say Teams, I mean the channels, the channel functionality, the team functionality, chatting,
collaboration, not just
collaboration,
yes,
let's have a meeting.
And
right?
do you think? Sorry.
And so I think a lot of firms have deployed that let's have a meeting piece.
Okay. Do you think the pressure from clients? So I think so obviously there's a lot of publicity in the States around Teams. There's a lot of advertising, so there's a lot of clients using it. And do you think that the pressure on firms is for using it as a collaboration platform, not just the chat function?
I think that is actually where most of the pressure comes from, because what's happening is the clients who are probably further along in the deployment are saying, okay, law firm, I can do this, and I can invite you in, lawyer, and you can use my Teams, and we can collaborate about this matter on my Teams. And then I can tell you that the compliance folks are going, oh! and they're doing like, it looks like, all their faces look like the screen. Because of course, once it goes there, how do I get that data back?
Yes.
You can't.
And it's just the so we'll get into the governance specifically, but before we get to drill down into that, it's also the lack of familiarity, isn't it? Like, so it's the fact that that they haven't used it before, that they haven't got the processes in place, that unlike, I think you said, unlike the DMS where you've used it for 25 years and you know how it works, it's that lack of, and it's even things like, what are things, is the general channel, why is there this general channel? Does it have to always be there? Can you get rid of it? It seems there's lots of unfamiliarity with the whole product, right? So it's about helping people to become more familiar with it, and then maybe avoid some of the panic.
I absolutely think, we spend a lot of time. I think one of the first things, anytime we're doing a product demo, the first question is there some basics the first question out of the person demoing usually, is there basics we need to review?
Yeah.
Because even just this idea that, wait, I can't delete the general channel, I can't rename the general channel, is people went, oh. Yeah. Right? The fact that really with the files tab underneath is SharePoint Online. And what does that structure actually look like underneath? And it's wrapping your head around that as an IT person, let alone as an end user, is going to take some time. And the fact that you can then go, if you've got the OneDrive client deployed, you can then go to that team and start syncing it to your desktop. Yeah. So each one of those things is a lot of things. And IT is trying to understand, how do we do this in a way that satisfies those long outside counsel guidelines that everybody signed at the same time. And some firms are even just dealing with the basic idea of, cloud. Yeah. How do I get management to sign off on the cloud? And
do you know what? Something just occurred to me that's really fascinating, actually. There's a strong cultural thing coming through in terms of the legal sector is very used to very highly that you can get people to change. They're dealing with usually quite often legal tech vendors where they can say, right, I want this change, I want that change. Whereas this is obviously, it's Microsoft, and it's something that people have been wrestling with for a very long time in terms of, do you go for the ERP or do you go for the the highly, the word is escaping me in terms of when they're trying to mold it to their own purposes. Wow. It's this ongoing debate over, do you go for this sort of this big ERP type system, or do you go for like this legal tech? And actually, obviously the solution is you know, going to be a bit of both, I think, but they're wrestling with the fact that, you know, they're going to have to deal with teams, they can't change it, but then they're obviously going to have something layered on top in order to help them cope with it.
But that's, I mean, the answer is
That was completely
you know,
inarticulate.
I mean, I don't think it's inarticulate. I mean, the reality is you can go with horizontal platforms, and then somebody's got to take, you know, what I call it the last mile, and basically customize.
Yeah, customize. That's the word that I was struggling with.
Not really customize, but have the feature function gap to make it work for that industry.
Yeah.
And the reality is Microsoft as a vendor has done that for years. And you can see different vendors have done that with Word, and have done it with Excel, and have done it, you know, with QuickBooks and other things, versus you can buy a very vertical specific application. So 3E and Aderant are very much designed for the way law firms work, and that's what that's what they do. It's all these kind of last mile challenges, where you have to configure and change a platform. And that doesn't mean, you know, and it could be the last 20 miles, not just the last mile. Sometimes in the functionality gaps. The difference is Microsoft, in this collaboration space, no one can keep up with Microsoft.
No.
Investment-wise in the generic function.
Exactly.
Right? So the best way, I think, we went from the Brady Bunch 9 person. I think they just announced another, I missed it. How many people, I think it's 32 people, I think, can now be in a meeting. And you can see their little squares. This idea of constant improvement is, you can't keep up with that engineering. I think the difference, though, with Teams versus Outlook, right? Because one of the things that is interesting strategically is, are people, it looks like Microsoft is trying to, slowly get rid of, diminish email, right? Diminish, and then as a result, diminish Outlook. So if you look at Teams, it has your calendar.
Yeah.
In essence, it has it has some of your contacts, and probably get more contact functionality. It has, and it is designed in a world that is designed to be a very open architecture.
Yeah.
I love the Outlook.
I love the planner capability, and the fact that it can really help you bring workflow within to the team. I think that was a bit of a revelation to me when I started using that. Okay, and I think a lot of the things that that people, things like the unfamiliarity with the general channel, actually they're really, once people get their heads around it, it's really not important, is it? Like, once you get familiar with anyway, so talk about things, just a few of the issues that people seem to be worried about. I've picked out a few. So naming conventions. So this is an this is an issue that comes up again and again, doesn't it? In terms of, and actually, you've given your recommendations in terms of what the naming convention should be. So I'll let you share that.
I mean, I think naming convention, it depends on the practice area. I mean, the reality is you're naming it not for, you're basically naming these things so that it seems familiar for the people who do the work. And my classic example is, if you look in your practice management system, time billing, it'll literally say, if you do tax work, it literally is client name, tax. Yeah. Every matter name is called tax. So there's no point in, for a tax group to put tax, right? You don't want to do that. Instead, you just put the client name. If you're talking about litigation, you classically, it's X versus Y in the matter name. So why do you need the client name? And these patterns are common, but it's also, you have a restriction in space.
Yeah.
And so that's also another challenge, because if you look at the Teams interface, you only get so many characters before it does that.
But then also you recommend a team per matter, is that right? So that's because of ethical wars, because if you go too crazy in terms of the way you lay out, then the ethical wars, it all starts to fall apart.
Well, if you've got, generally our recommendation is Teams is a team per matter, because that is the most easiest way to map it.
Yeah.
The only limitation is you got 500,000. You basically have 500,000 teams. You got 500,000 teams in a tenant. 200
channels per team.
And those restrictions generally work well. Where I recommend a single team is more in the regulatory scenario.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is, regulatory scenario, there's a set of lawyers who go and work to file a document yearly for each client. And these are the people who generally do a horrible job anyway of creating new matter numbers. Like, this is like all the risk management folks are like, could we just get them to create new numbers?
Yeah.
So in some ways, also just simply automating and creating a new channel for each yearly filing
Yeah.
actually would give, oh, look, we actually understand that is. And we also, you can also then, when the year is over, you can, in essence, hide, the one 3 years ago.
Yeah.
You can hide, you can also make it go away.
And you can automate the creation of a team on the when you set up the mesh in the practice management system, right? So then all that metadata moves across. So that kind of simplifies you can simplify sorry, we're now talking about CAM. So that within CAM for teams, you can automate that and yeah.
We automate all that, but the critical thing is this, right? And this is the thing to keep in mind. One, setting up a team. So why do you want a provisioning engine? Because we just make it easier, simple, cheaper.
Yeah.
It's just less work, right?
Yeah.
So in other words, you can have a human. If you don't have a product, the best, I always like to look at substitutes, right? What's your substitute? You're gonna have an Excel spreadsheet somewhere where you put the client, where you put the URL for the team, the client matter number, and somebody's gonna have to manually configure that based on whatever the client requests are. So at a certain point, you run it, so let's say that could spend 10 to 15 minutes a team. If you automate it and you could and there's two ways that we talk to people. Yeah. Either they change their new business intake, so there's a new checkbox, I want a team, or post matter creation, oh, I want a team.
Yeah.
We haven't seen anybody yet who says, I'm going to create a team for every workspace, for every matter.
Yeah.
So they're still really kind of doing it as requested.
Yeah.
But what's different though is no one's ever going to make a team, should not make it in essence public in the law firm.
Yeah.
Why? Do you really want to expose chat? Do you want anybody to come in and read the chat? It just doesn't make sense. And
then with the so the main thing is with the information governance side of it. So you've already touched on this about how the fear that that documents will just get left in teams, and that there'll be no kind of way of sort of bringing them back into the DMS. B, I suppose that they'll be at the point where they ought to be destroyed, that they'll still be in existence. There's all sorts of fears, aren't there? Which actually, and I guess also there's a versioning issue as well. So, and that's not something that's solved by Teams, is it? But that is something that can for Teams resolve.
Right. What we're solving is we're basically helping people bring the documents back in the DMS, how to get the documents from the DMS back into Teams if you want to use it. And then there's questions of how to do this and and this is another area where we can build the technology, but there's also a process element.
Yeah.
When will we use the Files tab and put documents in? When, when does it make sense? When does it not? I mean, and I will tell you, if you look at what Microsoft has done, the web version of Office that's connected to Teams, all of a sudden I've had this moment when I'm using the web version. I'm not even using the desktop version because it now has redlining. It now has all that track changes. It has so many of the features that you go, do I need to go someplace else? And then and if I'm real-time editing, I can see the little thing where someone's actually working on the document as the same as me. And that gets pretty incredible when you start really think about that versus the traditional process, which was whether it's a brief or it's a contract where we go, you take this section, I take this section, you create two different documents.
Yeah.
Everybody does their own editing. Then some secretary puts it back together. Right. And that is the stuff where the secretaries used to have to go, okay, I have to put all the pieces back together and make sure that it's correctly done.
Yeah.
And real-time collaboration around this eliminates that.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we're really starting to run out of time, but so I think that it's the process you talk about. There's obviously the process is key, and that there's so many other things that we could have talked about, including the fears over allowing guests, and again that comes back to having a process and ensuring that you understand what they're you understand where they're working. But I think that brings us on to this last point, which is about we're doing a project together, which we would really welcome. So Legal IT Insider and Prosperaware, we'd really welcome your input. Anybody listening in, we're trying to work to really unpick the processes that lawyers use, partners use, lawyers use, and how they work. So if you are listening and you would like to get involved, then do contact us. Our contact details are probably all over the web, but you're going to say, Keith?
Yeah, I think that is please. What we're trying to do is we're trying to actually get some from different types of practice areas, some samples of this is how I'd like to use it. So if you'd like someone to work with to say, let's understand how I'd use Teams, and we want to talk to you and say, this is why I think this is important to me, and explain what the problems you're trying to solve. Because I think many of the IT folks, would help them move forward and deploy faster for your firms. Yeah. And we also want to bring back together those best practices so that there's a general understanding in the industry. Here's some approaches to get this done. And we're looking for the lawyers who want to think through this and really want to say, I'm ready to kind of embrace this new technology.
Okay, so let's do it. It's exciting. So look, thank you. We've run out of time, but Keith, really great chatting to you. And hopefully people will come forward and we're going to do some interesting stuff. Thank you. Speak to you soon.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.